Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at standard 7.rp.1, compute unit rates associated with ratios of fractions, including ratios of lengths, areas, and other quantities measured in like or different units. We're going to start our lesson off by just reviewing some basic vocabulary. Ratio is a comparison of two or more numbers by division. The order of the numbers in a ratio should match the order of the words in that ratio. Rate, a ratio that compares two quantities of different units, for example, miles per gallon, miles per hour, dollars per quantity. Unit rate, a ratio that compares two quantities of different units and the second unit is one. So the cost per one item, or the miles per 1 hour, or the miles per 1 gallon. Ratios can show comparison between part to whole, or whole to part. So let's take a look at these apples. We have 2 green apples and 3 red apples. So if I'm comparing part to part, I'm comparing the green apples with the red apples, as represented here. So from green to red, I have 2 to 3, or it can also be written using a fraction, right? 2 over 3. And from red to green, it would be 3 to 2, or 3 over 2. So we can represent our ratios using either the word to, using the colon or fraction bar, part to whole. So looking again at now green to the entire number of apples that we have a total of 5 apples. So that would be 2 to 5, or the red to the whole, which would be 3 to 5. We can also use whole to part. So now we would have the number of all of the apples first, and then those represented by the color. So 5 to 2 or 5 to 3. At a bakery, for every 5 cupcakes sold, there were 8 cookies sold. Represent the ratio of cookies to cupcakes by 3 different representations. So for every 5 cupcakes, we have 8 cookies, and the ratio should be represented from cookies to cupcakes. So what that would mean is that we would need to write the 8 first. So we can say 8 to 5. We can say 8 colon 5. And we can say 8 over 5. We can also use words. So for every 8 cookies, there are 5 cupcakes. Or we can even use a visual representation where you may have the cookies drawn out as well as the cupcakes. There are 28 girls and 32 boys. What is the ratio of girls to boys? Simplify your ratio. So here we're being asked for a ratio of girls to boys, and I'm going to use my fraction to write it today since they're asking me to simplify. It just makes it a little bit easier. There are 28 girls and 32 boys. So my ratio of girls to boys is 28 to 32. Now, because the problem asks me to simplify, I must now identify what my greatest common factor is for 28 and 32, and then use that number to help me simplify. That number happens to be 4, so I'm going to divide 28 by 4 and also 32 by 4. If I'm using the same operation, the same number to my numerator and my denominator, then I'm really not changing the overall value of the fraction, I'm just simplifying it. 28 divided by 4 is 7. 32 divided by 4 is 8. So the simplified ratio of girls to boys is 7/8. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our steps for calculating unit rate. Step 1 is to set up a fraction by thinking about the order in which the quantities are being compared. Step 2, place the appropriate number in the numerator and the denominator. And then step 3 is to divide to get a denominator of 1. So if we start off by this example, $8.25 for 15 oranges, I want to know what the cost is for 1 orange. So my numerator will represent my cost, and my denominator will represent my orange. So here I have $8.25 divided by 15. We know how to divide decimal, so let's go ahead and do so. 825 is going to be my dividend. 15 is my divisor. Now we know that whenever we're dividing decimal, we need to line up that decimal point that's inside the dividend on top with the quotient. 15 does not go into 8, so we can put a 0 there. However, 15 can go into 82. 15 into 82 is 5 times. 5 times 15 is 75, and we subtract. 82 minus 75 is 7, and I bring down the 5. So now I have 15 divided into 75, which is another 5, and then I have no remainder. If I did have a remainder, I would go to the thousands position, and then I would round my number since I'm working with money. So what is the cost per orange? The cost per orange is 55 cents. So 55 cents for one orange. Here, I have a denominator of 1, so that tells me that this is the unit rate. Now let's take a look at the second example. 145 miles in 2.5 hours. So I want to know how many miles will be traveled in each hour. So we're going to set this up as miles per hour. And we're going to put 145 in our numerator and then 2.5 in our denominator. Now we must go ahead and divide to see what the actual answer is. So let's go ahead and set up our division. So we're going to put 145 inside the house, and we're going to put the 2.5 on the outside. Now here I have a divisor that's a decimal. So I need to use my monkey see, monkey do concept to change that from a decimal to a whole number. So I'm going to move this one space to the right. And if I do that to the number, to the divisor, I also have to do it to the dividend. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and add a 0. So now instead of working with 145 and 2.5, I'm going to be working with 1,450 and 25. So I'm just going to go ahead and rewrite that over here where I have a little bit more space to perform my division. Okay, so 25 cannot go into 1. 25 cannot go into 14. However, it can go into 145. It'll go into 145 5 times. And 5 times 25 is 125. Now I subtract, I have 20 remainder, and I bring down my 0. 25 can go into 208 times. 8 times 25 is 200. So what this tells me is that for each hour, the vehicle will travel 58 miles. So it's 58 miles per, which represents 1 hour. A 28-ounce can of baked beans costs $2.49. How much does it cost per ounce? So here we have that the size of the can is 28 ounces. And that cost for that size can is $2.49. So here we will be dividing to figure out what the cost is per ounce. So it's cost per ounce. So $2.49 will be divided by 28. Let's go ahead and set up our division. So 249 divided by 28. Put our decimal point. So 28 will not go into 2, and it will not go into 4. So I can put zeros here as my placeholders. 28 goes into 249 8 times. 8 times 28 is 224. And then I need to do my subtraction. 249 minus 224 is 25. Now, I'm pretty much done with my number, but there's a remainder here. Now, remember I said earlier when we're talking about money is going to be rounded to the nearest hundredth position. So I want to at least solve one more position so that I can round appropriately. So I'm going to go ahead and add a 0 to my 250, which is what we'll do to eliminate remainders. This number might stop at 3, it might not. But because I'm dealing with money, I'm going to stop at 3 decimal places and then round. 28 can go into 258 times. 28 times 8 is 224. Now when I subtract, I get 26. I do not need to keep going. I'm talking about money here, so I'm going to pause now and then round my answer. So if I take a look at 0.088 and I want to round this to money, I'm going to take a look at my 100th position, and then I want to look at the number to the right. So the number to the right is an 8, so it's greater than 5. That means I'm going to add 1 to the number, to the other 8, and it's going to be 9 cents. So 0.09 would be my rounded number. So how much does it cost per ounce? It costs 9 cents per ounce. Margaret's Bakery sells a dozen cupcakes for $25.56. How much does it cost for one cupcake? So the total cost is $25.56. That is for a dozen. How many cupcakes are in a dozen? What does that represent? If you said 12, then you are correct. So a dozen represents 12. And then we want to know how much does it cost for one. So here we're going to be doing division. So cost per cupcake based on the question. My 25.56 will go on top, and my dozen, which is represented as 12, will go on the bottom. Let's go ahead and set up our division. So 25.56 will go on the inside, and the 12 will go on the outside. I want to bring that decimal point up to my quotient. 12 cannot go into 2, but it can go into 25 2 times, which is 24 with a remainder of 1. And I bring down my 5. 12 can go into 15 once with a remainder of 3. And I bring down my 6. 12 can go into 36 3 times. 3 times 12 is 36 with no remainder. So the cost per cupcake is $2.13. And that will be your final answer. A car traveled on I-684 at 65 miles per hour. How far would it travel after 7.5 hours? Now, this problem is a little bit different than the others that we've been looking at. The others gave us the total amount of whether it be miles or dollars, and then asked us to find the unit rate, so the per item or the per mile or the per hour. Now, this question is giving us the miles per hour, and then it's asking us to figure out how far would it travel after 7.5 hours. Do you think we're going to divide in this problem? Think about it. We already know what the per is, and we're trying to figure out how far it's going to go in 7.5 hours. If you said you're dividing, you are incorrect. Here we're actually going to multiply. So we're going to take those 65 miles, and we can even set up a proportion so that we better understand it. 65 miles for 1 hour. And we want to know how many miles, which we can use a variable to represent, will travel in 7.5 hours. Now, whenever we have proportions, we can use the butterfly method. So I would multiply the 1 times my unknown, which I can use the variable x to represent. And then I'd multiply my 65 by the 7.5 hours. So let's go ahead and set that up. So x is equal to 65 times 7.5. We know how to multiply decimals, so let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to rewrite our numbers without the decimal point. So we're going to say 65 times 75, and then we'll place our decimal point back in afterwards. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 6 is 30 plus 2 is 32. Now we're going to put in our placeholder. 7 times 5 is 35. 7 times 6 is 42 plus 3 is 45. Now let's go ahead and add. 5 plus 0 is 5. 2 plus 5 is 7. 3 plus 5 is 8. And we bring down the 4. Now let's go back to our original numbers and see how many decimal places do we have. We only have one here represented in the 7.5. So I'm going to move just one decimal place. So what that tells me that is at a rate of 65 miles per hour, I will have traveled 487.5 miles after 7.5 hours. Okay. Thank you for watching and have a great day.